Okay, welcome everyone. Hopefully you are getting settled in. We will be we're going to be starting in a little bit, but I just wanted to welcome everyone and hopefully everyone is doing well. Um, if you have any tech issues or any difficulty connecting to the Zoom call, please feel free to use the chat box. You can locate the chat box at the bottom of your screen. There should be like a little emblem down there that you can go ahead and click on to activate that. Put in your issue that you're having, whether it's sound or anything, and we'll go ahead and assist you as best we can. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes for everyone to join in, and we'll go ahead and get started. And I also believe that there is a question in our chat box. If you can go ahead and actually answer it. It's really just wondering where everyone is from. Want to make sure to hear where everyone is joining us. Okay. Okay, pretty local for us. LA, nice. Oh wow, very opposite. We have New York, we have some NorCal, New Jersey. Oh wow, okay. So we are getting quite an audience today, huh, Jose?
I see Puerto Rico right now,
Oh,
Illinois. Wow. It's really great. It's great to see all these different states showing up and different parts of the country.
yes, I agree. I think it's just insane how, technology has allowed this. Like I can't even believe that we're on a call with so many different people from all different parts of the country right now. That's amazing. Okay, so let's see. We'll probably have like another minute and then we'll go ahead and get us started. Ooh, San Luis Obispo. Nice. Okay. All right. So as people start coming in, I'll make sure that everyone is still settled in, and if at any point in time any questions come up, we will definitely make sure to do our best to address them in a timely manner. We're also going to be doing our best to make sure that we are on time today. I know that you might have a busy schedule today, but just wanting to put that out there as well as that this is being recorded. So if you have any questions or if you would like to go back to it, we will be sharing the recording of today's webinar with everyone who has signed up. So don't feel like you have to be taking notes down, just in a hurry. We'll make sure that everyone is able to receive this information afterwards as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. Today is really about really discussing, what this freshman experience will be like and perhaps some tools that will really help our students feel comfortable with this new, a situation that's going on. So today's going to be about tips and tricks for that first year experience. Um, so let's go ahead and get started. To really maximize this virtual space that we're in today, we want to make sure that everyone feels that their voice is still heard, that we can go ahead and help in any way to facilitate this presentation. So if you have a question, if you have a comment that you would like to share, please feel free and feel welcome to use the raise hand feature. And that's actually a feature that can be found at the bottom of your screen. So once you click on that, we will be notified that this participant would like to share something. So we will go ahead and acknowledge it and allow you to unmute yourself and you'll be able to share it then. As well as we mentioned, we are having our participants use the chat box today. So if there are any relevant comments that you would like to add to any of the information that we are sharing, as well as any thoughts, feel free to put them in there as well. You know, we are checking the chat box as well and as best we can while we're presenting. And then last but not least, all our participants have been muted as they've come into the presentation, just to make sure that there isn't any background noise and just to really help the facilitation of the presentation, which also goes for the video capability. So just wanting to put that out there and make that clear. And then last but not least, we will be using Mentimeter a bit throughout this presentation. So if you are familiar with it, yay, we're very happy. If not, totally okay. It's very easy to use. You can use it, you know, on your device, whether it's a phone or if you're using a tablet or a laptop to connect to this call, you can use that there. But to just go ahead and get us started, I would actually like for my colleague to introduce himself first, and then we'll begin.
Thank you so much, Betsy. Hi, everyone. My name is Jose Rivera, and I am the volunteer coordinator at the TGR Learning Lab in Anaheim. And also, I guess you can see I'm a recent grad from one of the universities in the University of California system, graduating in 2019. So thank you, everybody, for being here. And I'm super excited to have you all learn some tips and tricks today.
Thank you, Jose. And we actually share the same alma mater, so we definitely connect on certain things. But hello, everyone. I'm Betsy Pena. I'm a program coordinator for the Irwood Scholar Program at the TGR Foundation. So we are very happy to be here today. We both work, have experience working with students and understanding maybe the different stressors that high school and college students both face. So thank you so much for being here today. And I actually am going to hand it over to Jose to start us off. Actually, no, I'm not. I wanted to go ahead and just really discuss what today will look like. You know, what different maybe concerns or tools will help students feel more comfortable and possibly going virtual. I know that maybe your courses or your classes might not be going virtual, but for the most part, there are certain schools or universities that have decided to proceed that way for fall and possibly into spring. So due to just different impacts from coronavirus, you know, how is it that we are adapting to this new way of learning? And maybe you had a little bit of taste of that, you know, in your senior year, you know, while you were trying to finish up classes. And now it's really understanding, okay, now that I'm taking this into my college transition, how can I feel equipped and supported to succeed in this new space? So to kind of help you out with that, you know, we really are discussing the campus resources, maybe the different residential experiences that our students may have, as well as the importance and the practice of both self-advocacy and self-care. So what that really means and how we can implement that, you know, in our daily routines to help us feel more supported and more confident in the decisions that we're making. So now I will actually go ahead and pass it over to Jose.
Thank you, Betsy. So on the screen, we're actually going to start off with the Mentimeter question. So if everybody could please take out any device that they could use to access the internet, go to www.menti.com and use the code on the screen, which is 406707, and just answer the question we have on the screen, which is, which types of resources do you believe can be found on a college campus? So we're going to give you around 30 seconds to kind of answer them, and then we will see the answers pop up on the screen, and then we can continue with the different resources we can find on college campuses. So feel free to just start adding in anything that you feel can be found on college campuses, and then we can kind of discuss those different topics.
And I know that tech might not always be our friend. So we want to make sure that we're seeing the responses. So in that case, just to double check that everybody is having the ability to submit, I'll actually go ahead and open it up on a different screen just for us to be able to see everyone's responses. Ooh, because I am seeing quite a bit.
Thank you, Betsy.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah, I see tutoring, counseling. Counseling's a big one, that's good. Fitness center, peer support, study groups, degree planning, health, mental, library. Some really, really great resources that everybody's throwing out there. So it kind of seems like everybody has kind of a sense of what different resources are on college campuses, which is great. Job opportunities. I see counselors again, tutoring, career centers. Tutoring and counseling seem to be some of the big ones. So it's great to see that all of you have kind of a sense of what different resources are offered on college campuses. So thank you so much for joining that Mentimeter. We're going to continue with the PowerPoint now and speak about the different types of campus resource centers that are offered on college campuses. So some people might be asking, what is a campus resource center? I know I asked that when I started college, and it's no shame if you don't know. So just to let you know, a campus resource center is a place or person which provide information, equipment, and support, such as different technology or just human knowledge that can be offered to students. It is available to students and are there to help you succeed. They offer different insight on issues and help problem solve anything that might be going on in your own experience. So some of the examples like you shared are libraries, academic centers, cross-cultural centers, LGBTQ resource centers, counseling centers, financial aid offices, and career centers. So just to let you know, this is not an exhaustive list, and different resources at colleges exist depending on the college and the different type of student population that do go to that college. So just because I listed some examples does not mean that that is an exhaustive list. And I just want to let you know that there are different resources for different needs. And I do want to let you know that I do encourage students to check the school websites for any lists of different resources, just so you can have more of a different idea of what resources are offered at your own university. And please take advantage of these different resources. They are there for you. So now that we kind of know what resource centers are and we're kind of understanding that as well, we're going to be speaking about how to approach those different resources. So moving along, we want to kind of teach you or kind of share different tips and tricks of how to actually approach these different resources. So one of the biggest things is just understanding what you need at that moment. So to kind of understand, consider your needs and think about what you need at the moment. So financial resources, cultural resources, social resources, or emotional resources. This is something that you can kind of think about prior to so that you can kind of have a better idea of where to start and where to go to. Since we do know that everything is a little bit virtual right now, and maybe it is going to continue virtually for some students in the fall, there's some different ways to approach these resources. So emailing the coordinator for more details on services offered is a really great tip, as well as you can also probably call through the phone to kind of see if they have any services offered virtually or if they are in person as well. A great resource as well is to visit the campus website for a list and map of resources offered in campus, because then you can see the different staff that are there, the details of the services, and you can familiarize yourself and get a little bit more confidence when approaching these resources as well. And again, take advantage. These resources are there for you. You pay for them through your tuition, or they are funded through tuition for state grants. The staff there are trained to help you in any situation that you are going through or anything you need help with, and they are student oriented. So they are there to kind of help with student questions or help you guide to another resource or different offices that might have answers for you. So just to let you know, again, just to kind of give you a little peace of mind, it's okay to not know where to start, but the best way to start is just kind of answering those questions yourself and then looking for any resources that are available for you, so you can kind of push yourself in that direction and be able to get any any questions answered. Sorry about that. So moving forward, now we're going to be talking about a huge resource, which is residential experiences. So I do want to let you all know, we're not going to assume that COVID-19 has passed. So I do want to kind of give light to the fact that You know, some students are probably not going to be able to experience residential experiences, but for those students that are still being able to dorm on campus and experience freshman housing, here are some kind of different topics and different things that happen through residential experiences. So again, while many schools and classes will be virtual this upcoming fall, some schools will still be allowing students to live on campus. So what are some of the benefits? So a huge benefit of a residential experience is convenience. Just imagine this. You are living on a college campus, which means that you are living just minutes away from your classes. So you can wake up, get ready, walk to class, you're there in 5 minutes. That's a huge convenience. You're closer to activities that happen outside of class. So club activities, job offers, or campus job opportunities, or even just hanging out with friends on college campuses and just being able to walk to your friend's dorm and just hang out there. And no long commutes or parking as well. So you don't have to worry about those fights that happen in the parking lots. The second one is specialized communities. So specialized communities are offered through student housing at times, which offer of different types of communities or different types of halls, depending on demographics, so what type of students are at the campus. Cultural needs. So there are some schools that offer different cultural housing, including international housing for students to kind of either live there if they are from that cultural background or if they want to experience that cultural background as well. So kind of aligning with the diversity. Sustainability, how to live sustainable, learn sustainability, and learn about different things that help the earth, as well as how to change your own lifestyle to be able to accommodate those different topics. Campus connections, this is a big one. I've seen that a lot of different universities are offered. Campus connections is something that is offered to kind of allow you to understand more of the different resources and different peoples that are on your campus, as well as kind of get you involved in different things such as student government, resource centers, campus opportunities, and different clubs as well. First generation housing. A lot of campuses are starting to offer this as well, kind of sharing different housing for students that are going through the same experience as first generation students and kind of giving them a little bit more resources on how to gear themselves to be able to experience this new phenomenon. And then major specific and field specific housing as well. There's some universities that offer different housing depending on your major or even on your field to kind of get people from the same background in the same housing to kind of help one another. And then general interest, which is kind of like a big collaboration of all these different things into one so that everybody can kind of get a different experience and a different sense, a different topic all the time. So these are just some examples that are offered through residential experiences and some of the different things that do kind of go on. So now moving on, it's socialization and networking. Oh no, sorry, I kind of misspoke. We're still on the residential experiences slide, but now we're moving to the socialization and networking bullet. So residential experiences do help with meeting other students, creating diverse groups, fostering friendships that last throughout college and even after college. They allow you to kind of understand other people that are going through the same experience as you, so you are able to socialize through the same experience. And then I do kind of want to emphasize that although I am talking about residential experiences and all the great things that happen through residential experiences, this does not mean that people who aren't experienced this are not going to experience it themselves as well. This is just one of the benefits of residential experiences, but I do not want to alienate anybody that is not going to be able to have that experience and just share that there are different ways to kind of get involved, and this is just one of the benefits from residential experiences. So no worries, you're not going to be left out. You're still going to have your own ability to kind of socialize yourself as well. And then academic support, hallmates in the same classes, tutoring one another, and helping each other study as well as stay accountable, which is a huge benefit in these housing situations. And then the last one is guidance, which happens through either older students living on campus with you, so kind of resident advisors, commonly known as RAs, who are trained in inclusivity, diversity, de-escalation, first aid, campus resources, and experience as well. And there's sometimes a friendly face to kind of talk to and also create a community. So those are some of the great experiences from residential experiences and some of the benefits. But now we're kind of going to be changing gears into self-advocacy. Just because self-advocacy is something that is probably new for a lot of us. I know it was new for me and I didn't really know what it was until probably my second or third year. So knowing it now is very, very important. So what is self-advocacy? So self-advocacy is stepping up for yourself, seeking help, and making your self-interest a priority. So why is this important? Why is this something that we need to know now? So self-advocacy is super important because it does help with personal growth, meaning it allows you to learn skills that exist throughout your career and life and kind of know where you are able to, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses and what you kind of need to work on, and be able to seek that help as well. It also teaches independence. Self-advocacy allows you to move away from relying on others to help get what you need. So I know that when I was in high school, I was so used to just waiting for the instructor or my teacher to reach out to me and let me know, hey, you're missing this, or hey, you're not understanding this well. In college, it's a little bit different. You have to understand where you need the help and how to reach for it and how to advocate for yourself in that sense. So it's nothing scary, but just being able to kind of know where you need help with and being able to reach it. And then it also develops knowledge. So as you go along, you will learn what works for you and what doesn't. And it allows you to be both a better student and a leader and share those newfound skills with others as well. So once you learn how to self-advocate for yourself, that's not the end. Now you have a new skill that allows you to teach others how to self-advocate for themselves so that now they can understand as well and then pass that knowledge along. Kind of a see something, share something, help something. So now that you know how to self-advocate, we're going to be speaking about how to actually communicate with different folks. So now we're going to be looking at the screen and we're going to kind of be seeing the different examples that we have. We're going to take a minute or so to just read through the examples, see what you see on the screen, and then in your mind, just kind of choose an example that you would choose to speak to a professor in a moment of need or in a moment that you aren't understanding something in class. So take a minute or so, read, and then choose in your mind which is the better example that you would use.
And if you would like, you could also put it in the chat box, if you would like to just see, get a feel for which example you would prefer.
Okay, I think that should be enough time, hopefully. No worries, we're still going to be able to kind of discuss this, so they're not going to go anywhere. But we're just going to be discussing the different examples and what they kind of share. So now we're going to be actually dissecting the example. So moving to the next screen, we are going to be speaking about what makes example A the better example for the sample communication. So now we're moving on to the sample communication A, and it's going to be kind of showing you tips to effectively communicate. So as you can see, example A addresses the recipient correctly. So you want to make sure that when you are reaching out to somebody, that you are using the correct titles for them, using the correct name, and making sure that you are spelling their name correctly. It's important for you to make sure that you address them correctly because it allows the recipient to see that you took time drafting this email and that you do consider them somebody that you respect and somebody that you need help from. The second thing is that you want to personalize your email as best as you can. The last thing you want to do is send a very general email to a bunch of people and making it known that you just copied and pasted from somewhere and just sent it that way to kind of get their attention. You want to make sure that they feel like you sent that only to them and make them feel like you respect their time as well. The next thing you have to do is introduce yourself. Make sure that you let them know who you are in terms of your name, how they know you, and what your relationship with that person is. If you are messaging your professor, emailing your professor, make sure that you let them know where they know you from. So what class they know you from, what lecture it is, what time it is. Just because there's a lot more students in these classes and they may not know you individually by name, but they will get a little bit more of a sense of who you are if you introduce yourself that way. Another one that's huge is make sure to use an appropriate email address. So making sure that you aren't using your personal email address and using your school email, just because that way it lets them know that it's not a spam email, that it's somebody from their school, and they can identify you as well by looking up your email to making sure that they know that that you're in their class and that they know that you're a student as well. Moving on is be concise. Make sure that when you send an email to write it as thoroughly but also as concise as possible, so that it's not a long-winded email and they're able to see what you need and what your needs are as soon as they read it, so that they don't have to kind of analyze what you need and have to spend a long time on your email and just get back to you as quickly as possible. You also want to thank them. Make sure that you are taking time to thank the recipient, because they are probably receiving a lot of different emails from different students, and it is very, very hectic sometimes, and it can get a little jumbled up. So just being able to take the time to thank them for their response or thanking them for their time in advance is super important, because you want to make sure that you are showing your respect to that person. And then also use correct grammar and spelling. The last thing you want to do, well, not the last thing, you want to make sure that you are using correct grammar and spelling. You don't have to be a pro at it, so don't worry about it. But at least try to just make sure that the names are correct and that you have mostly everything correct, so that the person can see that you took your time to drop this email and that it wasn't just something last minute. But by no means you have to be a spelling wizard or be super, super scared that you sent something wrong. But these are just some of the tips for effective communication. Of course, there are many others, but these are kind of some of the ones that will help you self-advocate for yourself, email professors or TAs, teaching assistants, or any other peers in your class so you can get any help with those situations as well. But now that we've finished with that, we're going to be now moving on to Betsy, who will continue to share some great tips and tricks to make your transition into college a smoother ride.
Thank you, Jose. I appreciate it. So first and foremost, I do want to say congratulations, okay? I know that for a lot of our students on this call, you know, maybe you've graduated last May, well, not last May, just this past May, or even currently this month. So definitely taking a time to acknowledge that and just to be happy about the fact that you've achieved this milestone, okay? And you know, kind of going into this next part, I do want to say that on that note of self-advocacy, Jose, this summer is really a great practice run for our students to go ahead and put their self-advocacy tools to work a little bit, because there's still quite a few items that do require your attention, you know, to make sure that you're starting off your freshman year you know, on the right path, and you're not thinking, oh, wow, I haven't done this and I haven't done that. So to go ahead and get started, just some things that you would want to follow up on and just to kind of keep in the back of your mind, maybe throughout this month or like the next couple months, is any required paperwork. So if there's any paperwork that you still have to submit to the admissions office or, you know, to the financial aid office, or even perhaps a program coordinator based on your own major, anything like that that you still need to follow up on, make sure that you're doing that. And a very easy way to see if there is something like pertinent that you really do need to make sure that you submit, it should be on your to-do list on your portal. So that's a really great way to just stay organized and to make sure that you're staying on top of it. Next is anything regarding financial aid or, you know, possibly health insurance. I know that sounds a little strange, but in terms of financial aid, and we'll kind of review of this a little bit more later on in the presentation, is like financial circumstances, any updates to that, and just making sure that, you know, if there's any change that has happened in your household, that you go ahead and make sure that you send that information to the financial aid office. And this is also the time that you should be really understanding if you're going to be opting in or opting out of health insurance at your campus. You know, if this is something that you are going to be participating in and accepting, understanding, you know, the costs and making sure that that's been included in your financial aid package and just your overall costs. Next is testing and official transcripts. So if you have not done so and you still need to submit and send your official test score reports, make sure that you're logging into your College Board account or your ACT account and that you're sending those official score reports to the school that you are attending in the fall. Same thing goes for your official transcripts, making sure that you connect with the records office at your high school. Like if, I know that right now it's a little difficult because, you're not necessarily maybe going in, but if their front office is open, like giving them a call and seeing if there's someone in the records office that you're able to provide the address of your college or university to, and they can actually send that for you to your school and get that taken care of. But that definitely needs to be done soon. I know that they usually give a pretty early due date for that information, so make sure that you've double checked that you've sent it or that your school has sent it for you. Next is any housing related material. So as Jose mentioned, certain students are going to be living on campus. There may be like a different method that they are prioritizing students to come onto campus. So either way, if you're not living there in the fall, it's still very important to hold your spot. Okay, so with that said, you're making sure that you're submitting your documents on time. That, for example, that could be your contract, which may include, a possible meal plan that you have to, solidify. Also, your roommate interest form. I think this is probably one of the most important, and this is coming from a person that, didn't have that opportunity, but I mean, I would really want my roommate interest form to be submitted, make sure that they have, my personal like thoughts and preferences. And then last but not least, also the fees for that. And if there's any sort of like deferment or you're having issues with completing that fee payment, that's also something that you should be communicating. Kind of going down that list is freshman orientation. So this part is going to look very different this year with a lot of our schools remaining in that digital realm. So it'll most likely be happening virtually, but it's just as important, okay? Freshman orientation is really the time where students are, getting their classes ready for fall, you're meeting with your academic advisor, and it might be a really good opportunity for you to start building that social circle. A lot of moments that people have for freshman orientation, if they have any sort of like, conference Zoom calls, you're able to see at least, visuals, and maybe you're able to connect with them and be like, oh, are you free for another call off the side, offline? And you get to start your social group that way. And the next two are, it's a little different with placement testing. It depends on your school. It depends on how they go ahead and have their students enroll for classes. So I know that for freshmen, I think two big subject areas that placement testing really happens is in writing and in math. So they want to make sure that you are starting at a level you are comfortable with and that you're starting off strong and not feeling like, oh, wow, this is too much for me. Like, we never want to overwhelm our students on that first quarter or that first semester, okay? So as long as you get those placement testings done, you're able to go ahead and start at the pace that you need to be at. And then last but not least, this summer, I know how I just said, you've graduated, you're like, oh, Betsy, I want to take a breath, I feel like I've earned it, and you have. I know that these past couple months have not been easy, but it's also important to really feel like you're staying productive in some way. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, productive in like big, large scale, but if you're finding ways to maybe learn a new skill or to just work on yourself, or if you like to volunteer, ask, don't hesitate to reach out to maybe like your counselor. Even though, you're not in high school necessarily anymore, I'm sure they're still willing to communicate with you. So reaching out to a counselor, or maybe somebody that you know from a CBO, so a community-based organization. I know that we have students reach out to us and ask, are you aware of any volunteer opportunities? Do you know of any place that may have, different like shifts that I can go in and help at? So just kind of keeping that in mind. And again, that can look different this year just because of, the COVID impact. So seeing maybe what you could do in your own space that can still be keeping you productive in your community that way. But like I said, there are some items such as these that still need to be followed up on. So just make sure that you're following through and getting these taken care of. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. And just kind of on that note of self-advocacy, I think it's really important that as you're becoming more independent and you're gaining this sense of control over your own time and schedule, it's also very important to gain financial independence. And this is something that everyone learns at all throughout their life. Trust me, you know, I'm out of college, I'm out of my undergrad, and this is still something that everybody's still working on. Like, I can say that for myself. But I think that this is a conversation that is pretty new to, you know, high school students or even now college students, but making sure that you know that you're budgeting correctly, that there's not going to be a financial stressor for you, or that you're doing your best to not have that as you're going through your undergrad, because that really does affect your experience and how you feel about your classes and how much energy you feel you're able to put on your academic and your coursework when you're not worrying so much about, you know, other parts that include paying for certain items or bills of sorts. So the first kind of step that can really help you do that is reevaluating, you know, that financial circumstance that we were talking about earlier. So understanding, you know, there might be, if there was a change in household income, maybe, you know, one parent is only working, maybe you live, you know, it became a single parent household, or, you know, maybe whoever it is that you live with at home has had, you know, pretty significant economic changes, you know, in their employment status. Maybe they've lost their job or has just cut down significantly on hours. So that sort of information definitely needs to be sent over to the financial aid office, because then they're able to realistically understand your situation and provide you with the financial aid that you may need. If that is the case, there's actually this really great tool. It's called Swift Student, and it's like that blue circular emblem right there. So if you're wanting to just take note of that, if you look that up, it's actually a website that provides free financial aid form appeals, like appeal letters. So if you're going to, you know, ask for a revision of sorts of your financial aid package, this is a really great tool. They go ahead and see, you know, how you're eligible, and they have free templates on there that you can use. If your school, like your college or university, if they don't provide you with one, you're able to use that one off of their site. So it's a really great tool, would highly recommend. Another kind of step that really helps is just understanding if you have an opportunity to go ahead and participate in like financial planning webinars. I know that sounds very like, oh, you know, financial planning, that sounds like too much for me right now. You know, I'm barely just trying to find my footing, but it's a really great opportunity. And usually for the most part, if our students are taking out any form of loans, I know that their universities or schools will most likely offer like loan info sessions to understand like the terms and conditions of borrowing money, specifically from that university. So definitely participate in that and understand, okay, this is what I'm agreeing to when I sign for this specific loan, and when they are expecting me to start paying this back. So really getting to the real understanding of loans will help you see how to better plan for the repayment of them. Also, as well as your bank. So if your family has, you know, has their accounts with certain banks, and maybe you can meet with a financial advisor there, you know, somebody that's working at that branch. Maybe they can really explain to you the different opportunities for borrowing, or maybe even explain to you what your best options would be, aside from borrowing from your university. So kind of learning about those different tips and tricks of banking. Also just some tools to really help you out. I know that, and these really are tools that anyone on this call can use, both student and non-student. I know that me and even other staff have used some of these tools. So the first one being Intuit Mint. It's a budget app, a budgeting app that you can download on your phone. And it's really just, and it's actually that square on the right-hand side of the screen. This is just an example of what it may look like for someone. So it tells you how much you're spending per month on which certain categories, and kind of giving you a little reminder like, oh, you know, you're this far away from this budget. So just make sure that you're keeping an eye on how much you're spending, which I think is a great tool, especially if you're just starting out. It's a little bit difficult to get into the rhythm of creating your own budget. But if you have any other budgeting app tools that you really like to use aside from it, please put them in the chat box and we'll make sure to share those out. I know that everyone is constantly looking just for different sources of just help and trying to test different things out that work for them. Aside from that, online banking. So if you do already have a bank account, a checkings account of sorts, and if you don't have the app for your bank downloaded on your phone and you're able to do that, I would highly recommend you do that, because you're able to see in, more real time of how many times you're technically, like swiping your card. I know that maybe some of us like to do online shopping, or maybe, you're paying for more things on the web versus, swiping your card at a store right now. So just making sure that you're also putting that down on your phone, because you can see and kind of keep track of what it is that you're spending. And then last but definitely not least, I would highly recommend you just look into a federal credit union if that is something that you're interested in, and seeing what works best for you. I do have an example on the screen from Schools First, and that's a California specific organization or branch that is available to students and educators here in the state. But I'm sure that there's something similar to you in your area. If there is one, I would definitely dive into the research and see how, they have really great benefits to banking with them, especially for students. I know that this was something that I'm telling you from experience, I wish I would have done when I was an undergrad and I was told, Betsy, you need to do this, you need to do this. So I'm telling you all today, once you're able to go ahead and start, an account, and if it's something you're interested in, I would highly encourage you to do so and not wait on it. I know that Jose has mentioned that, he's a part of Schools First, so I'm not sure if you would like to share maybe like a little tidbit. You're more than welcome to, Jose.
Yeah, so thanks, Betsy, for that. Yeah, I have Schools First. I've had Schools First since I graduated high school, and have had it since then. What I liked about it was the fact that my school had an actual branch at the university. So on campus, I could actually go to the branch and get any issues sorted out, or if I had any issues with my card or apply for anything, I could go through there. They have really great benefits for students. They tend to be a little bit smaller than national banks, so they're a little bit more customer based. Well, from my experience. And so far, I've had no issues with them. Just take into account whether a federal credit union is versus a bank, what meets your needs and what can help out in the long run for you. But yeah, from my own experience, I've enjoyed having a federal credit union, and I don't see myself going anywhere else.
Thank you, Jose. So just a little piece of advice out there for everyone to go ahead and just look into it. So I know, trust me, this has been a lot of information, and I think something that kind of helps us to digest everything at the end of the day is just practicing a little bit of self-care. And I think it's very crucial for us to understand what works for us, right? What works for somebody else might not be the way that you can best decompress, but I would really like to get to know your strategies. So if you're able to go on Mentimeter again, you should be able to now go ahead and submit your responses on this slide. So just sharing methods or ways that you relax, decompress, that you show yourself that self-care. So I'll go ahead and give everyone about 30 seconds or so, and I'll go ahead and go back to the screen so we can take a look at our responses. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that as we're going through this, like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to share those in the chat box, and we'll address them as so. So let me go ahead and see if I can get to our screen and see what we have going on. Let me go to our next question. Okay. So just making sure that you are submitting your responses. So for anyone who just joined us, we are submitting Menti responses right now to currently, different methods of self-care that you enjoy, and we'll go ahead and share those out. And if you prefer not to use Menti and, you know, put it in the chat box, you're more than welcome to do so too. Okay, so we have, wow, I love how we have different, already so many different options. So music, podcasts. Ooh, we have to share podcasts for everyone here. I am a huge podcast fan. Okay, reading, you know, more for leisure. Yes. Hanging out with friends, definitely important. Binge watching, oof, that's very easy to get wrapped up in, especially right now, trust me. I've had quite a few of that. Taking a walk, okay. You know, sleeping, yes, very important, you know, getting that rest. Different hobbies, writing, yes. Anyone who doesn't understand me time probably hasn't had the opportunity to experience me time. So I agree, me time is very important, getting that time for yourself, baking. I wish I was a better baker, to be honest, but I do love to consume baked goods. So if you have any favorite things that you like to bake, feel free to share because I'm looking for different challenges during this time. Yoga, theater, drawing, okay. All right, so I'll go ahead and switch us back. Video games. Let me switch back because I do think that all those are perfect points, and I do agree that everyone does self-care differently. And maybe it's something that you're willing to get out of your comfort zone and try and see what you might like even more. So I know that freshman year, the usual ideas are like, oh, you know, freshman 15, you know, maybe we've heard that before, or just like the rigor of college classes, you know, that's something that as a freshman, you haven't experienced yet. And I know that a lot of our attendees have inputted that as a concern, you know, like those are some questions that you all may have. So these are just some tools to really help you still feel centered and still feel that you are maintaining, you know, that mental, physical, and emotional health on your end. So I know that maybe for some of us, we may be familiar with Scriblio. So using like online, maybe digital tools to help you reconnect with your friends, as well as that, you know, small blue emblem at the bottom with the hashtag and smiley face. That's like a group me app, and that helps you just like create different groups for like messaging. So just like different ways to still stay connected to your friends in a virtual realm. Maybe if you're not able to hang out with them right now, that's still a way to keep yourself emotionally balanced. You know, having that time to, you know, have conversations with them and, you know, chat, it releases a lot of maybe stress or tension that you may be holding on to. And then, you know, next is just, you know, finding that help or support, knowing that your counselor, your friends, your family, your, you know, anybody in the community that is really there to help you out. I mean, I tell my students all the time, I am here if you need to talk, if you need to, you know, need someone to listen to, you know, I'm just here to be that ear that they might need. So just looking out for those people in your life that can offer you that. And then there are some tools out there that you can use on your phone to help you, you know, meditate. I did see that was a self-care strategy. So I know that Headspace, and then that little H emblem at the bottom, it stands for Happify. It really helps to create that mental strength, right? And how to overcome like maybe overwhelming situations or scenarios, you know, understanding how you can like take care of yourself, and keeping that positive self-talk is very important. If you are able to maintain a positive mentality, you are able to just go ahead and go forth with your work with more effort, more pride, also with more patience. So that's something that is definitely a tool that needs to be harnessed for your freshman year, is just being patient with yourself, understanding that this is a different space that you're in, but that you're okay and that you have other people in your, you know, virtual support system that's there for you and to help you succeed. And then I didn't want to ignore physical health. Trust me, this is something that I am working on still, is that physical health component of just, you know, maybe going for that walk, or, you know, working out, being very intentional about doing workouts throughout the week. For example, I know that gyms might not be opened. Maybe you're not comfortable going to the gym even before all this happened. Maybe you work out on your, you know, at home. Whatever the case may be, right now is actually a really perfect time to kind of start with that. So 2 different tools that I would suggest are, I know it sounds kind of strange, but Instagram. So I know that most of you might already have this app on your phone, and this is kind of why I recommended it. All you have to do is really look up different fitness profiles that offer live workouts for free. You know, I love, you know, any sort of opportunity that I can have to, you know, if it's free, why not? Why not give it a try? Again, another app at the very right, it's called Fit On. And it's actually an app that you can go ahead and tune into live classes with other people. So you're able to still have kind of like that class workout feel and still have that motivation from others around you. So just kind of putting it out there. These are just some tools. And if you have any other tools that you like to use, trust me, I am open to just learning more about them and trying them out myself, because I think we're also trying to find ways to keep ourselves, again, mentally, physically, and emotionally healthy. Okay, so as we move on, I know that aside from maybe that worry of, you know, physical, you know, emotional and physically, mentally healthy, I think some other maybe concerns or just considerations that some of our students may face as they're going into their freshman year, know that there is support. So for example, I was on the free and reduced lunch, you know, in high school. So, you know, when I got to college, you know, they don't have like a cafeteria, you know, giving out your lunch once you punch in your code necessarily. But I also did qualify for, you know, student support services in college, which meant that they offered different resources and tools to really help me feel like better prepared. Like they would give out free Scantrons, you know, for testing. So I didn't have to, you know, purchase them, even things like pencils or different supplies. And now as well, you know, kind of going along with that mentality is like food security, you know, like since I was not, since the free reduced lunch aspect doesn't exist in college, they do have other opportunities though for students. And one of them being a campus food pantry. So if you know, end up finding yourself, oh, you know, like I do qualify for these services, you know, definitely take advantage of them, you know, check them out. A campus food pantry, you know, they're there for the students. They're free, you know, you go in, it's very much, you go in, maybe if you want to grab a snack, or, you know, if you would like to just grab some items for a meal later, you can. It's definitely something that you're able to go ahead and just use as a resource, and for it to not be a concern, especially for students who are going to be living on campus in the fall. And you're thinking, okay, now that the campus still may feel a little different, that it's not in full-blown effect of maybe what that usual, you know, first semester will be like, knowing which resources are open to you. So if that is, you know, something that you're thinking about, or, you know, you're kind of wondering if it's a possibility, make sure that you reach out to your school and that you're asking them about this. Another is, you know, like identifying budget-friendly grocery stores, you know, around you to do your shopping at. Trust me, I still do that. Wondering, okay, where is it that I can get, you know, the most for my buck necessarily. Especially, you know, when you're trying to just maintain a budget for self-discipline purposes as well. You want to make sure like, okay, I have 30 bucks. What am I going to buy with these 30 bucks? Like, so just kind of keeping that in mind. And then these other 2 components really, it can really develop in students differently. And I want you to know that it's not just you that, you know, feel these concerns whatsoever. Okay. So for example, imposter syndrome. I'm not sure if maybe some of our students have already felt this. If you have, please feel free to let me know in the group chat. I think it's really important to have this discussion about imposter syndrome. And it's the idea, if you're not aware, if you haven't felt it yet, it's really when you have these emotions of, or thoughts that you are, you know, of self-doubt. You know, you're thinking, am I worthy? Like, how did I, you know, get accepted to this school? Like, am I as smart as everyone? Why am I here? You know, do I deserve to be here? And this was something that I even personally experienced when I got to college. I think that's when I really felt that, you know, because if you're going to a school that might be a PWI, so like a predominantly white institution, or if you're going, if you're surrounded by students from, you know, more affluent, you know, backgrounds, you know, and maybe you're not used to being around people who, you know, come from very wealthy backgrounds, it's very different conversations and feelings that you might get. And that's completely normal. The important thing is to acknowledge that you have those thoughts you know, and be like, okay, like I know what I'm feeling. I know that this is something that's kind of coming to mind right now, but how is it that I can transform these thoughts to, I do belong here. I have earned my spot here. I am capable of performing, you know, as good as a student next to me because I'm able to, right? Like really harnessing that sense of pride in yourself, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's really difficult sometimes. So some tools to kind of help you with that is building your own community. You know, even if it's like in this virtual space, you can still find people that maybe you share interests with, commonalities with. It could be culturally, it could be socioeconomically. So maybe you grew up in the same neighborhoods and they can really understand where you're coming from, you know? So just kind of keeping that in mind and building that community to I guess like validate your feelings too, because you see that you're not the only person feeling this way. Another is seeking mentorship. Mentorship is so crucial. I think the way that you build community, you know, the way that is the way that you should be seeking mentorship. Mentorship is really about that guidance, and it doesn't, you know, mentorship can come from anywhere. It could come from a family member, it could come from your friends, it could come from your work area, like your work setting. It could even come from your academics. So if a professor or a TA really becomes that mentor for you, like a teaching assistant, or it could be that your supervisor, you know, becomes your mentor. That happened to, you know, me. That was my situation when I was in college and I got my job while I was there. And my supervisor became a longtime mentor. I still keep in touch with her. You know, she still checks in on me. It becomes a really strong friendship and pillar of support that you need. So don't discredit it and look for it. Be active, and, you know, don't hesitate to reach out for people like that. Next is campus connection. I think that was also another big worry that a lot of our attendees had. You know, it's like, how do I even connect with people on this campus? Like, you know, I'm not there in person, but online classrooms are a really great way for you to start with like a group already of people that you may not already know, but it's just a great way to just keep in touch. And then faculty interaction, you know, keeping up with your professors and just understanding that, you know, they're there, and maybe virtually it might be easier to approach. So take advantage of those opportunities to go ahead and integrate yourself onto campus. And then I know for any educators on this call, or maybe even parents, I know that it's a little difficult to find ways to still support students that are going through this, you know, journey of independence, but checking in with your student. I know that they would definitely still appreciate you asking them, you know, how are you doing? How is it going? You know, what are your classes being like? But also understanding, you know, that you're embracing the change, that you are showing them, you know, just specks of positivity, because I think, you know, sometimes we all need that uplifting. And I know that you've done a great job doing that so far, and just keeping that up as they start this transition. And we've talked a lot about self-advocacy and just passing that problem-solving torch and being there to show them and guiding them to the answer rather than providing the solution to them right away. And something that we've done too, we've started something called College Tidbit, and that's just like a really quick source of information for students and for parents or educators to use. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to look it up on our website. You know, we definitely have that available. And then also encouraging our students to participate in, you know, situations that allow them to build their power skills. So I know that for a lot of us, you know, we might be looking into our first jobs. You know, if you're going into college and you're like, oh, I need my first, you know, I need to find employment, maybe looking into like creating an academic resume of sorts to really help you with that interview process and get you ready for that. So just kind of keeping that in mind, and those resources are available on our TGR EDU Explore website. There's much more college access and just other resources in general to really help out our students there. And it's all free. So just kind of wanted to remind you of that. And then, you know, I wanted to just go ahead and just really now, you know, we've gotten to the point where we're actually able to introduce our guest speaker, and it makes me so happy to have him on board with us today. So please help me in welcoming Christopher Munoz Kaline. He is the Assistant Director of Inclusion, Assistant Director of Admissions for Access and Inclusion at Clark University. And I will actually go ahead and turn it over to him. He will be sharing more about who he is and, where he's from. And hopefully we can go ahead and go into some questions afterwards. So I'll go ahead and have Christopher join us now.
Great, thank you, Betsy. Can everybody hear me okay, by the way? Okay, good, I see some nodding. So my name is Christopher Munoz-Colleen. I'm Assistant Director of Admissions at Clark, and I wanted to share a bit about my background. So I'm originally from Florida. I grew up in a mixed home. My dad is indigenous and from Mexico, and my mom is a white European background American. I went to a large public high school in Florida, but I knew I wanted to go to a smaller college. I just knew I wasn't quite ready immediately after high school. So I went to a community college for a year. And I had such supportive professors in that year. They continue really to be mentors for me, even to this day. But during that year, I was working at a smoothie shop and then going to community college. And then in the evening, I would research different colleges that I wanted to apply to. And I ended up getting accepted to my top choice school, which was Reed College in Portland, Oregon. And I got I was really fortunate to get a generous financial aid package. But I had to laugh earlier at the list of, at the tips that Betsy was sharing, specifically the part about making sure you're keeping on top of that list. I can echo that. I was so worried that I was going to miss some kind of document and Reed would say, never mind, you can't come. But I still want to say that fear might have been a little bit unfounded, but you'll just put yourself in a really good spot if you keep on top of that. You want to make sure you get the dorm that you want and things like that. So keep on top of that. But it did work out. I went to Reed and we couldn't afford to have my parents fly with me, so I flew by myself. And it was literally me in a suitcase, and I flew to Portland, Oregon, from Florida. So literally the other direction, the other corner of the country. It was a pretty overwhelming beginning. I will also echo those points about finding resources beforehand. But I had a really positive experience in my orientation. So at Reed, each major had an open house, and I thought I might want to major in a literature, like a foreign literature program. So I went to the German open house, and I remember walking in. It was in the German dorm on campus, and I walked in and there were no students, and it was just 3 professors in the living room of the German house with coffee and cake, which is a kind of German tradition. And it was an amazing meeting. I really had the sense that I was going to be supported by those 3 professors, and that really did put me on the path to being here now. So I got to go abroad my sophomore year to Berlin and Munich for a whole year. I got to take college classes with German students at a university, and I remember having to give a presentation in German. I had never spoken in class at that point. This was at the German university after having 1 year of college level German. And I remember when I started to speak, every single head in the room turned to look at me because I had an American accent, and they did not know that there was an American among them. But being with the department at Reed really set me up for a lot of those kinds of experiences. So experiences that seem scary, but are also thrilling, and they lead to growth. For example, in my final year at Reed, my professor, who I had met at that original coffee and cake meeting, Katya, she helped me apply for something called a Fulbright scholarship. So that allowed me to teach English at a high school in Germany for 2 years after college. So I got that scholarship and was able to teach at a high school in northern Germany in a city called Kiel, which is basically in Scandinavia. It's so far north. But after those 2 years, I wanted to stay. And so I applied for another scholarship that let me, it paid for my master's degree and my living expenses. So literally they put money in my bank every month. And I was able to focus on my coursework. And the only way I knew about that was Katya, because she told me about it. I knew about it since I was maybe a sophomore at Reed. So it was a really, that kind of mentorship connection was really, I mean, that led me to being here now. So I was back in the classroom at that point. I was 25 when I started my master's. And I made friends in that master's program that I still speak with daily today. That was a period of my life, I think, where I learned how to do really difficult things, which I had been practicing, but I don't think that's really, I guess, where you could say the rubber hit the road or whatever that metaphor is. So an example is I remember writing a 20-page paper in German, and I was facing exactly what Betsy was talking about, which is the imposter syndrome. Um, and, that can sound kind of like the phrase imposter syndrome can, think, oh, well, I don't have that, or what does that mean for me? But when you start to catch on to the messages, you'll know exactly what it is for you. But I remember for me, it was thinking I had failed, just assuming as a baseline that I had failed before I even turned it in. And I was ashamed to turn in the paper. And then, so I turned it in and waited. This was my first paper of my master's program. And then my professor emailed me about the paper and said, we want to put it on the website as an example of how essays should be. And that was a really big moment for me. I mean, on the one level, that was an amazing accomplishment, but on a deeper level, I was actually shocked. Like, how can I be so off the mark of how can my thinking about my capability be so off the mark that I thought that I failed a paper that actually is a model paper. And that's what I mean where I said the rubber kind of hit the road there. I'm still getting that metaphor wrong, but it's okay. So I realized that it didn't actually matter how many awards I got, how many prestigious fellowships I got, if I didn't actually stop to question that belief that I'm not smart enough or I don't belong or I'm not good enough. It actually didn't matter. I mean, when people outside tell you it's really wonderful, but it still doesn't quite land if you don't actually believe it. So I really realized I had to find the root of that belief. And I decided to practice it actively when I had to write my master's thesis, which ended up being so many pages in German. And but when I was writing that, I really had a kind of twin focus of I'm really committed to stopping that imposter syndrome when it comes up. And it was really good practice. So I finished my master's degree and decided I wanted to come back to the US to work at a college. I was an admissions intern at Reed in my senior year, and I really enjoyed it, but I really wanted to work in that field again, but focused on historically underrepresented students. I think the imposter syndrome message, I probably learned it at some point in just being in our culture and not seeing so much of people that looked like me in places I was going. So I really wanted to be in a field that helps me actively change that. So that's how I'm at Clark today. So I'm an admissions counselor. I read applications and try to make our admissions process inclusive to students of color and first-generation college students. And I want to say also, the path that I just outlined is not linear at all. I mean, it goes all over the place. But so I say that actually as an encouragement. I could not have predicted during any of those steps that I just told you that I would be here now. And I'm probably some future step that I can't possibly see right now either. So that makes it actually quite exciting that it's an unfolding path. And I try to just focus on being here. So that's my introduction. And I know we had a couple of questions that were kind of the frequently asked questions or questions from participants that came in.
Yes. So let me go ahead and go to those. I know that our students and our attendees went ahead and, they had quite a range of questions, but I know that when we were looking at them, we condensed them down to 2 big points that a lot of our students were kind of aiming towards. And I do want to say to everyone that if you do have questions and you feel like, after these are responded to, that you still have your question and didn't feel quite answered, please put it in the chat box, and we'll definitely do our best to get to them. And I know that Christopher is an amazing person and resource, so I know that he'd be willing to kind of follow up with any like that. So we'll make sure to save the questions as well if we don't get to them today. So, you know, with the first and foremost, thank you for sharing your journey, you know, through higher education, Christopher. I know how you said it's not linear. You know, I think so many of our students are so worried about getting all these steps done in a certain order. And I think it was just so key for you to say that. So thank you so much. And, you know, with that said, it's really about, you know, what are some words of wisdom you have for incoming freshmen, you know, based off what you experienced?
Thank you for saying that. And I want to echo too, if you have questions in the future, you're always welcome to email me. I'll make sure to share my email so that you have it. But to start, I have we talked about mindfulness earlier. I have actually 2 active tools you get to use that are kind of practices you can actually start literally in this moment. So I will share the first one, which is to question limiting beliefs. And the story I shared earlier is a really perfect example of that. So, you know, I realized when I'm speaking in class or writing a paper, there was somehow a suggestion internally that what I was doing was not smart enough or adequate or something like this. So I decided to kind of become a detective and wait for those messages, you know, kind of rather than ducking and hiding, just turn around and get my notepad and say, all right, come out. What do you have to say this time? And that actually helped have a more humorous attitude about it. And you kind of realize that those messages aren't very creative. They kind of just say the same thing over and over and over. And it's like a neighbor that just says the same thing. And I don't say that to diminish from the pain that they cause. They do cause pain. I mean, I still get caught up in them and believe them. And it takes some time to kind of get out of the grip of them. But if you make it a practice and you actually expect them, that puts you in a way more powerful position. And if you have a humorous attitude, you become kind of like Teflon to them. So a phrase you can use to work with this is real but not true, and that is saying yes, the thoughts are real in the sense that they're actually happening, and you're having feelings that are real, but the thoughts might not be true. And honestly, sometimes just saying that, like, okay, right now I'm totally caught up. I'm believing I'm failing or falling short, but could it be that potentially this is not the whole truth? And just that can help get you a little bit out of the grip. So again, real but not true. I mean, that's something you can write down and put in your pocket and just remember it. Sometimes I just remember that phrase and it's so helpful. And the other mindfulness practice that I would give is to intentionally take in the good. So there's a lot of neuroscience research that shows that when a good thing happens, it actually usually slips right by. Our brains are typically quite focused on what's wrong, scanning for danger, what could go wrong if nothing is wrong right now. You know, it'll just kind of produce something just in case. And that's an ancient survival mechanism, but we don't really need it anymore. And we actually have to kind of work against it, because sometimes it'll focus on something negative and our brain will kind of obsess and rehash it and focus on it and think about every angle of it. So what we want to do is actually focus on good things for around 20 seconds is the suggestion from neuroscience. When they happen, actually pausing what you're doing and focusing on it actually helps it sink into your implicit memory, which means it becomes kind of part of your knowledge. Like, you know it in your bones that actually good things happen and your life is good. And you don't have to wait for good things to happen. You can just think of one literally right now and focus on it. So that's a really amazing tool when you realize how helpful it can be. So I started doing this when I realized I was proud of myself for something that I did. If I went to office hours, even though it felt kind of scary beforehand, I usually ended up having a wonderful time during them, and then just kind of forgetting after. So what I did was just make it a commitment, and just after office hours, I would just take it in for 20 seconds that I did it. It was scary, and I did it, and I enjoyed it, and here I am. alive. Who would have thought? And you can really do that with anything. So things you're grateful for, things you're proud of. If your friend has an accomplishment, why not? It's free. You can just be happy for them, and you also benefit from that. So those are two practices that I give you, and I want to emphasize the word practice. Think of it like fitness. You actually don't need to be perfect at them, and you're never finished. You know, it's not like you reach a certain point in fitness and then you can just kind of dust off your shoulder and say, I'm going home forever now. Like it's an ongoing practice and a training of where our attention is. So just keep that in mind. And I did have some other tips related to college specifically. So one is to find community. Those practices tie exactly into this. Sometimes it can be difficult to go against those messages of imposter syndrome. And it's really helpful to have a community that can actually remind you when you're stuck. So I tend to lone wolf things, that's kind of my accidental habit, I guess. And, trying to knuckle your way through problems. And I've learned that community is really, really helpful, that we only actually get stronger with community. So an example is I would never ask for help on anything. I just thought, like, I'm weak if I don't do it by myself. And I was humbled when I had to start writing those longer papers in German, because I'm not a native speaker and I need someone to check the grammar. So I had friends who were native German speakers, and we were actually able to support each other. So they actually studied English, so I could help them with their English papers and they could help me with my German papers. And that's a really kind of clear example, but I'll give you another one that's more current. At Clark, we have a staff of color lunch every Wednesday. We're doing it on Zoom now, but normally we meet in person. And, it's not like it's not like every time I go, it's like magical. Sometimes I go and the conversation is slower, or sometimes it's not thrilling, sometimes it is thrilling. But I've realized that the magic isn't just showing up, right? It's just the commitment. It is so meaningful to go to the lunches where we are laughing and the lunches where we are frustrated and the lunches where we're having a slow conversation. It's really by staying with all of it that we gain trust in each other and can count on each other. So I really think the magic is in the showing up with community. And sometimes I give the strength and sometimes I need someone else to give me the strength. So that's you need sometimes an outside reminder of what's important. So find a community is my first tip there. My next tip is related. It's to make it a habit to use resources. That can mean finding a community group. But with this tip of making it a habit, I'm trying to emphasize how we do that. That it has to actually be an intentional habit. So I did this in college. I would describe myself as a not science person, which is probably imposter syndrome. I realize as I say that out loud. But in freshman year, I was taking biology, and we had free peer tutoring at Reed. So that's something to look into at your school. So I just decided to make appointments with the biology major. And not, like only right before a test, but actually ongoing. That's like the habit part. So we met every 2 weeks, and it was so helpful because that was my most difficult subject. But because I literally built in meetings already, I even would study for those meetings so that my tutor could test my understanding. And you can honestly do this with any resource. If your college has a writing lab, you can make it a habit in your essay writing process. Like, okay, I'll go once a week or once every 2 weeks when I'm writing a paper, and I'll just show them what I'm doing, make sure, get feedback early on. If you build it already in, you don't need to think about it as you're going. I think that's like the best gift you can give to yourself. It's almost like if you have to go down a path, you don't want to have to make yourself build the path as you're going. That can be really exhausting. So just give yourself a nice path to walk on. And I want to emphasize that with habits, it will always be easier to not do them. And that sounds silly, but really, it'll always be easier to find I'm too busy today. I don't want to, I don't feel like it. even if you know that it's a good thing for you, we can still get caught up in that kind of, I don't know, that kind of message of somehow it's more appealing to not go, even though I know that it's really good for me. So a homework assignment that I'll give you right now is keep a document of resources. Maybe it's the Multicultural Center, or maybe it's the Writing Lab. And as you learn about the resources, practice making a commitment. And I say the word practice again, we're not going for perfection. I think practice is really the art of continuing to show up, even if you fall off, even if you mess up or whatever. It's always getting back up. And that's what we're aiming for. So if you suddenly forget that you had that commitment, great. As soon as you remember, wonderful. That's a moment to celebrate, rather than getting stuck in the imposter syndrome of, oh, I can't believe what a failure I am or whatever. Just ignore that and focus on remembering that you want to do that. And my final kind of college tip is to learn what it means for you to be out of the comfort zone. Or maybe another way to phrase it, what's your practice of being out of the comfort zone? So when I was in college, I did a lot of things that were out of my comfort zone. I will say going abroad was out of my comfort zone. I did not know how anything worked in Germany. I had never been to Europe before. So I'll give you an example. I wanted to sign up for a gym at one point, and this was out of my comfort zone, I'll say, on multiple levels. I was not very athletic. I felt very out of place in gyms, like I don't belong or something, or everyone knows what they're doing and I don't, so I shouldn't go. And then it was a German gym. So I actually had no clue what the document was saying that I was supposed to be signing. And the person at the front desk was so patient and tried really hard to answer my questions, but I had to ask around 100 of them. And that's a perfect example of what I mean, is that it would have, of course, been easier to stay home and not go to the gym, not ask those questions in my broken German. And it really took some practice to go, okay, nothing dangerous is actually happening. I'm just signing up for a gym membership. And I know I want to do this. And it's not easy, but I'm still going to do it. So I've adopted that as a practice, to do things that are not necessarily easy, but they're good for you and you know it and they help you grow. And so I'm not suggesting that you always leave the comfort zone, or that you just, anything that's out of it is good and anything that's in it is bad. I'm just saying practice with your intelligence and your wisdom of what you know is good for you. And it's good to just have a practice where you're testing that edge a little bit and growing. So my advice for you going into college specifically is learn what those things are for you that you want to do and you know are good for you, but they're not easy. They might be like facing fear or boredom, for example. Those two things will send us right back into the comfort zone usually. Like an ounce of fear or boredom and we're just right back in. So it could actually be for you that your community practice is out of the comfort zone because it's easier to stay home, but you know that showing up helps you. So I would invite you just to consider that. What are things that are good for me? And they actually are how I want to live my life, but they are not necessarily easy. And the key question, how do I practice that with kindness towards myself? Not a drill instructor mentality, but kindness and self-mentorship. And I did want to add on that I asked current Clarkies their advice to you. And one piece of advice that I want to share is from Khadija, who is actually an international student from Germany, and she's an admissions ambassador at Clark. But she said that for her, the big lesson that she's learning that she would pass on to incoming freshmen is that it's okay to not know everything yet. And we will always be in that kind of position if we are learning. So she said that she changed her mind 20 times about what she wanted to major in. And it wasn't like it was a waste of time. That's what she really wanted to emphasize. It's not like it's bad that I needed to go here to see that I want to go there, right? It's all part of the process. And she said that she learned something about herself at every step of the way, and she's thankful for it. So Um, and that, what she just said is so huge. I wish I could bottle that advice up and just keep it and give it and have everyone have it, because it can, that's a big version of that, right, about your life, but it can be really small too. Like you can be writing a paper and realize you needed to research, you went down some rabbit hole, and it sometimes it takes that. Sometimes you have to go down a rabbit hole and go, oh wait, that's not what I need for this paper. And there's no way to do that without doing it. So it's not a mistake. I think that's just kind of the attitude of mind that she was encouraging. So those are my tips based on question number one.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Christopher. I think, I think how you mentioned practice, not expecting perfection. I think that's something, impossible to attain, but if you're practicing kindness, I think that's what's really important. And, I know that we are, getting close to our time. So I know that if anybody needs to hop off, we definitely understand. But, maybe, Christopher, if you wouldn't mind just providing us maybe with like one resource or action item to that you would recommend, our students as they start, their college experience virtually.
Sure. So the one that feels most important right now is to actively look online for resources. So I'll just give you an example, and resources can be under any aspect here, but an example from Clark is the Multicultural First Gen Student Support Office. The director is named Haley Haywood, and she does workshops, pre-orientation programs, everything like that. So all of her resources are now going to be online until we're back on campus in August. And my encouragement to you is to find the Haley of your institution. Even if you don't identify as a student of color or a first generation college student, I can guarantee that there are resources for you, like Betsy was emphasizing before. There's academic support, peer mentorship. Find your version of the biology tutor that I found. And your college will organize that differently. So you could Google or search, your university's name and then student support, or your university's name and diversity, and just see what comes up. That's an action item. And if that doesn't work, here's the one underneath it, which is to email the admissions office. So when a student has trouble finding Haley, they email me, and then I, of course, know to connect them with Haley. So email the admissions office at the if you can't find it yourself. But there will be some kind of support for you, and if you seek it out now, that ties in with all of the points that we mentioned before.
Yes, I think that's something that's so key, is knowing who to ask, right? I think that's what stops a lot of our students, and sometimes it stopped me. Like, I'm going to be very honest, is like, if I don't know who to ask, then I'm just not going to ask it. So just starting off with a good, starting mark for yourself. And I did want to say, really big thank you to you, Christopher, for joining us. And I know that these were only 2 questions, and you guys might have any, other questions that you would like to ask him or us. And if you do, please put it down in the chat box. Know that we will respond to them. Maybe not in this session right now because we are wrapping up, but know that we will follow up accordingly. Okay, so if you feel that there have been questions that still have not been answered, put them in the chat box. We'll take note of them, and we'll make sure to share them with Christopher. But yes, thank you so much, Christopher. I feel like everyone has their points of inspiration. And I think for a lot of our students, it's very good to know that whole idea of everything not feeling linear. I think for a lot of us, we kind of go through life expecting to follow each step. So thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing your journey and any sort of resource and insight that you provided us with today. So,
of course, I'm really glad to do so. And before I forget, I'll put my email address in the chat. It's easy to find on Clark's website, but just so you have it there as well.
Yes, so we'll make sure to include that information in the email out, to just in case they don't have pen and paper with them right now, or if they're putting it into their phones. But we'll definitely go ahead and make sure to follow up with any sort of contact information and questions, like I said, and the recording will be sent out. But I hope everyone has a great day. I know that we're getting near the weekend, so hopefully everyone has a beautiful weekend as well. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.